If you have been enjoying these horoscopes, please do remember to subscribe to my channel. And when you do so, tick the notification bell so that you can get notified every time there's a new video available. In addition to that, if you would like to more deeply explore your own horoscope, I do offer several different types of astrological service, starting with my basic astrology session available for only $99. And you can find more information on that here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscopes. Before we get into the sign by sign horoscopes, I just wanted to cover a few of the vital aspects that we're going to be kind of experiencing in the month of April. Now, just so you know, there's a lot more stuff going on than this, but I'm just touching on the key points. Big in the astrological news for the month of April is actually something that took place right at the end of March, which is Neptune's residence in Aries. And Neptune's in a section of the sky called Uttara Bhadrapada. For those of you who aren't familiar with my work, I do a lot of work with something called nakshatras or lunar mansions. And not going into too much depth with this, they're a little bit different than signs, but you can kind of understand them in a similar way, but they're different. So Neptune in Uttara Bhadrapada, what are some things that are some hallmarks of that? Well, first of all, Neptune's going to be transiting Aries. It's the first sign shift of Neptune in over 14 years. So this is big astrological news. So we're looking to, especially with Neptune in Aries, to pioneer new ways forward, but using our imagination. For humanity in general, this is a really powerful period of time where people can really tap more deeply into their potential if they more willingly accept and try to transform their shadow side. So Neptune in Uttara Bhadrapada and Aries on the personal front, it's a journey of self-discovery. A journey of self-discovery, but one that is confusing, one that is illuminating, so confusing and illuminating both. Chaos giving way to awareness, imagination and flights of fantasy giving way to realms of reality. But the way that this may impact you on the personal front in the month of April is discovery of aspects of yourself or another, because Uttara Bhadrapada has a tendency to do that. It's about the two opposite sides of ourselves or the two opposite sides of another coming into contact with each other. Right? Ultimately, it's about embracing the shadow side of our personality so that we can surrender to our higher potential. So things that may kind of take place during this would be greater and greater levels of self-discovery or equally discovery of things about another person, but not really sure about the details that you might be picking up on. Where there's confusion, always ask for clarification when it deals with another, rather than just kind of assuming, because as the age-old saying goes, sometimes when you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me, if you understand what I mean. So it's not always the best thing to do. Following on the heels of that shift, which is at the end of March, the first big shift, I should say there's others that happen early in April as well, is Saturn's aspect to Uranus. So Saturn's also in Uttara Bhadrapada, and Saturn's presence in Uttara Bhadrapada, we can understand that confrontation with the side of ourself that we don't really like. Saturn, in terms of mythology in Vedic astrology, is the illegitimate child of the sun. So Saturn is the illegitimate child of the sun and shadow. So Saturn in Uttara Bhadrapada can bring to the surface a weeding out process. And this is likely going to happen through some chance encounter or unexpected event that Saturn is forming a harmonious alignment with Uranus, which is in Kritika. Kritika is about purification, cleansing out everything that is not pure, getting rid of it, releasing obstruction from our path. All of those things are the things of Kritika. So this is an awakening moment through a chance encounter or through a chance event that maybe helps you to understand a talent you didn't know you had, or to recognize a weakness that you didn't know you had, and giving you an opportunity to set things to right that might have ultimately been wrong. This is joined with a harmonious alignment between Mars in a section of the sky called Pusha. Pusha deals with the concept of acceptance of limitation and how the acceptance of boundaries and limitation or willing sacrifices ultimately provide us with the impetus in order to make progress. So we're fortunate that this event between Saturn and Uranus is also joined by that aspect between Mars and Saturn, because it's going to give us the capacity, if we're able to accept this side of ourselves, and there will likely be initial frustration, it's going to give the capacity for growth, for deepening of understanding of ourself and another, and an opportunity to heal a relationship. Now, this happens 2 days before a alignment between Mars, as we said, in Pusha, and Venus in Purva Bhadrapada. So Purva Bhadrapada is what precedes Uttara Bhadrapada. Purva Bhadrapada is the recognition of the two sides of our personality. It's the recognition of the split, whereas Uttara Bhadrapada is the reintegration. Purva Bhadrapada is the recognition of the separation. And so with Mars trining Venus, which Venus is in Purva Bhadrapada, and Venus also conjuncting Saturn, what we're looking at is a reflection over relationship difficulties, but an opportunity to heal things. Venus retrograde's really great for that. It may make it feel to you like there's, relationship problems when Venus is retrograde, but ultimately those relationship difficulties have an opportunity to heal, especially because a day after this Venus aspect with Saturn, we've got Mercury stationing direct. And then a week later, we also have Venus also stationing direct in Pisces, where it's exalted. So this whole process that's been going on with Mercury and Venus basically conjuncting each other almost the entire time that they've been retrograding through Uttara Bhadrapada is giving us a tremendous opportunity to identify problems from the past and really begin to heal them as things move forward. But we need to be careful because the the astrological alignments seem to indicate that we don't necessarily have all the details clear. And it's easy to get frustrated because we often want progress that's more immediate than time will allow. And around the 17th to the 19th of April, we have Mercury conjuncting Neptune. Again, both of those planets in Uttara Bhadrapada. And then Mars also trining Neptune, and the Sun forming a tense alignment with Mars. So this brings to the surface some things that make us kind of question the situation that we're dealing with. We want progress to be quick, but the details that allow us to move forward, well, they're a little bit foggy, and ultimately that can be frustrating. And with the sun's alignment with Mars, we may be placed in a situation where we're confronted with reviewing some of our beliefs, some of our ethics, allowing those an opportunity to change. We want to do ultimately what feels right in our own heart, but we may face some difficulties or some tension that place us in a situation where that's not allowed. And this occurs at a time when the sun is also forming a tense alignment with Pluto in Shravana. Now, what's Shravana all about? Shravana is symbolized by the ears. So sometimes it brings to the surface people saying things about us or us hearing things about other people. Those are common physical world occurrences that take place with Shravana, but ultimately it's about making sure that we're seeing the essence of something, making sure that we're seeing the truth of something. So ways that this can take place are that we want to do ultimately what feels right in our heart, but we can't see that perhaps what we're confronted with that we have to do is ultimately what the best thing to do is, right? Confusing? I'll go over that again. So sometimes we want to do that which is right by our heart, or all the time we do, really. But sometimes we get placed in situations where it feels like that's not possible. So we kind of question whether this is something we should do or something that we should be involved in. We're trying to do our best, but we don't seem to have an opportunity to do that. Well, this aspect can say, even though you may think that's not the right thing to do, ultimately that is the right thing to do. Other people may kind of question your ethics or question your beliefs or go, "Ooh, did you hear about so and so? They did this, that, or the other thing." You need to watch out for gossip with this particular alignment. So, with that being the case, don't take it too personally. Know that you're doing the best that you possibly can. This is followed on the 25th of April by Venus once again conjuncting Saturn. So, some relationship difficulties may come to the surface from what is said with that Sun Pluto square, right? And these are things that you have to sort through. Try not to let that conversation become too explosive because Mars at the end of the month is going to be opposing Pluto, right? So there can be a situation that may be somewhat inflammatory because Mars Pluto oppositions are like that, right? Things get said, things can come to the surface that, well, maybe aren't true, but they get said anyway. That's why I said avoid gossip at this period of time. Not that you would be the type to gossip, but at the same time, some things that said can lead to an explosive atmosphere. It's best to not get involved with that. Set the story straight, but don't let things become inflammatory because ultimately it's just the nature of the situation. And this is about you beginning to develop greater and greater levels of trust in your own heart and allowing your values to change, grow, and evolve. Now, let's take a look at what some of these alignments are going to mean for you personally through your sign by sign horoscope. Happy birthday, dear Aries, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. What a birthday month for you, Aries. And for those of you who celebrated your birthdays in March, I haven't forgotten you. It was likely quite a birthday month for you, too, because at the very end of March, we had Neptune shifting signs for the very first time in 14 years. And what's really monumental about this is it's setting up camp in your sign for the next 14 years. We're going to have a little bit of a period this year where it retrogrades back into Pisces and then re-enters Aries, but it's a really powerful period of time and it's giving you an opportunity to really kind of reinvent yourself and to really use your imagination in order to do so in a really powerful way. It may have been that recently you had to take a deep look at some aspects of yourself that maybe you weren't really that happy about, or that you kind of kept locked away from the light of day. Maybe you weren't even aware of these sides of yourself, but they're now beginning to surface. And that's quite an empowering moment because it's giving you, for lack of a better way to put it, access to greater and greater levels of yourself. You know yourself better, and knowing yourself better, you have a better idea of, well, at least the fact that you want to change your path in a really, really radical way. But I usually don't like to tell people to kind of have a good dose of caution, but in your instance, it actually might be helpful, at least for the month of April. So, some of the key themes that you're likely dealing with is you may be kind of reflecting on a relationship where there's been some changes recently, and you're looking at how deeply you value that particular partnership, but you're also looking at how deeply you value your own independence. And the questions that you have to kind of take a look at in April are, do you want to deal with the stress of bringing that relationship back to the present moment, or some of the aspects of that relationship back to the present moment? Because it may not be that this relationship is actually ending, it's just changing. And so you're reflecting on it and you're going, can things stay the same, or do things need to be radically different? The answer to that question is they need to be radically different. They really do. Because yes, there are elements of the relationship that were stressful, and you don't really need to have that stress in your life. And besides that, you're changing. And when we change, the relationships in our life, because relationships are like a mirror, they have to radically alter as well. And sometimes people cannot keep up with the changes that we're needing to bring into place. And that doesn't mean that they have any shortcomings or that they're bad people. It just means that we're changing. And ultimately, that's a good thing. And in April, you're likely looking at radically new ways that you can reinvent yourself. But there's a hint of caution that's kind of in the back of your mind. Towards the end of the month, we have an opposition between your ruler, Mars, and Pluto. And that's Pluto is kind of giving you a vision or an idea for the future, but you may have some people kind of feeding information into your ear, kind of giving you guidance that you're not really that clear on, and you may have to revisit some of those connections as well. Go with ultimately what feels most inspiring in your heart. Yes, part of it you may have to confront feelings of insecurity even to go that way, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If there are hints of what these other people are saying that hold true for you, you might want to take that to heart and you might want to look at it a little more deeply. For those of you with children, it could be that your actions will impact your children. And of course, where that's concerned, you have to really kind of you have to take things into consideration. Something that you've likely recently learned, I gave a little bit of myself away. I said we, something that you've likely recently learned is how you have to be accountable to your actions. So if you're going to take a step to create something, whether that be a new way of kind of presenting yourself, or a new way of or making some choices financially, or having some ideas of how you want to invest your money going forward. All of these things can be considerations that are coming to the surface for you. You have to take a look at what you can commit to for the long run, because choices have implications and you're ever more aware of that. And Aries is notorious, and it happens because Aries energy is really good at sparking things, but sometimes is not always as excellent with the follow through. And being keenly aware of that, you're going, if I'm going to create a a mess, then I'm not going to create it. If I'm going to try to create something wonderful, then I want to make sure that that something wonderful doesn't turn into a mess. And so you're looking at what you can actually commit to going forward, and that has you being a little bit cautious. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. Hints of revolutionary change are in the air for you, Aries, but occasionally a measured revolution is a much better choice. Hello there, Taurus, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. So, why do you feel a need to defend your decisions against others? Sometimes we get into this habit of second guessing ourselves, and then next thing you know, people are appearing all around us who mirror this side of ourselves that is full of doubt. And if we dwell in that doubt too deeply, then we're likely going to find ourselves in a position where something that was an inspiring thought and something that maybe felt really, really purposeful in your life and something that was seemingly like felt like a way in which you could give back to those that you care about suddenly becomes not such a good idea. And the thing you have to ask yourself really is first of all, why do you need to defend your decisions against other people? Now, sure, maybe if it's joint finances or, if you're in a relationship, that makes sense. But even then, signs point this month towards you perhaps doing that a little bit more than you really need to, which is a sure sign that on one level, you're likely defending your own decisions against a certain part of yourself that just goes, I'm really not sure about that. At the end of the day, you're not going to be able to make every single person in your life happy with the decisions that you're making. At the end of the day, you just have to be secure and happy with your own decisions. Now, your decisions may impact finances, and you may be somewhat concerned about letting yourself get into debt for an idea that you have that hasn't really proven its way. And this is actually something that's leading you in a certain direction towards a future lesson. I'll give you a little bit of hint right now. That hint is sometimes it's good to do something sheerly for the sake of inspiration, but sometimes it's even better to do something for the sake of inspiration. And in addition to that, get recognition and maybe some financial reimbursement for the actions that you're taking. Right now, though, you're cautious. You're maybe concerned that your passions are getting the better of you. And what it's going to be good for you to do right at this moment in time in relation to the situation you're dealing with is to take a deep look at things. What isn't working? What could work better? So don't let the doubt of others or your own doubt halt you in your tracks. Around mid-month, Mars, which is in Pusha Nakshatra, Pusha Nakshatra is a very I would say directing nakshatra. It has a way of nourishing a lot of your best ideas, but it does so quite often through pruning back and restriction. Now, that Mars is going to be forming an alignment with the North Node. And that North Node has you on one level super passionate about the path ahead and with the desire to be really ambitious. And because it's in Uttara Bhadrapada, this idea that you have is something that's likely further reaching than just yourself. It's some sort of idea that's really helpful, if not just to your community, to people in general. And so it's something that you very deeply want to explore. But around mid-month, around about the 11th, which is when Mars's aspect to the North Node becomes exact, it's likely that you're letting the input of another person hold you back. And that's not something that you need to do right now. As a matter of fact, as I was saying, you need to examine what is and isn't working. And that also relates to the people who are in your life. Are they helping you on your journey, or are they hindering you on your journey? You need to not let yourself get pulled away from what you're focusing on by the social distractions in your life. Instead, now is the time to strengthen your trust in yourself and in those people who are backing you and who believe in you, rather than casting your pearls before swine. Keep quiet about your choices and remain confident that you do know the way. Hello there, Gemini, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope, where you get to watch me push my glasses up my nose over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, right when I was getting ready to record your video, my glasses just kept slipping down my nose repetitively, so much to the point that I went, you know what? Maybe now is not the right time to record the horoscope for Gemini. But you see, if I let something like that stop me, you'd never get to watch your horoscope. You'd never get to watch your horoscope. And it's really kind of silly to think that way, isn't it? So, why are you thinking that way? Why are you thinking that, hey, if I'm on the right path, everything should be absolutely smooth and easygoing, rather than recognizing sometimes if you really want something, you have to go out and get it. You have to take a chance. You have to take a gamble. And sometimes it may not feel safe for you to take that gamble. As a matter of fact, you're likely to find that the entire time that K2 is transiting your fourth house over the coming year and a half, that's a repetitive theme. That you're going, I don't know, this doesn't really feel so safe and it doesn't really feel secure. So I'm of two minds, as usual, about this situation. And I really don't know if I should step out of this position, especially as it relates to your career, and go explore something that I've always wanted to do. Let me share something with you. Sometimes the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. And you really have a couple of choices. If you stay put, for those of you where this is dealing with something related to career, if you stay put in your career, you're likely going to find that the same old conflict and chaos just keeps repetitively rising to the surface. So, in your effort to escape the difficulty and take the easy path, you're instead keeping yourself in a path that ain't so damn easy. So, you have to ask yourself, which of those paths you'd rather choose. Would you rather go down the path that's more inspiring, right? Would you rather go down the path where you feel liberated and you feel more free? Or would you rather stay stuck in a position where you're letting somebody else's opinions hold sway over your life, the direction that it should be taking, and how you should approach your life? So I think you know the answer to that. So maybe it's just a matter of shifting your approach to the difficulty that you're dealing with. Sometimes if you look at a challenge like a puzzle rather than something to be afraid of, things can be a lot more fun. It might be difficult for you to put your finger on the source of the problem that you're dealing with. That's what's holding you back. Everything is really foggy. You want to set off in a new direction. You're not really sure of what that direction looks like, feels like, smells like, etc. And so one part of you is going, I don't really know what I should do. I don't really know what's at the root of this problem that I'm having that's making me feel stuck and keeping me from making a decision and holding me back from making a massive decision about my future, and instead just getting me stuck in a state of dualism. But yet at the same time, I'm wondering why there's so much conflict in my workplace. You're not committed. And the moment that you commit to the direction that you now need to go. And the moment that you decide, hey, maybe if I take this confusion and instead use my imagination, and if I look at my problem as less of a problem and maybe more of a puzzle, maybe something scary can transform into something that's radically exciting for me. You can handle this. You'll figure it out. It may not feel like the most secure route for you, but let passion hold the greater sway in your decisions in April. Hello there, Cancer, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. Sometimes, the universe gives us a subtle little nudge to let us know that we really should go in a certain direction. And then sometimes it gives us a really strong kick in the backside to say, why didn't you listen to me the first time that I was trying to let you know? And it seems like you're having much more of that secondary option, sadly enough, for you, Cancer, but maybe it's not sadly enough because this is actually something that's going to work to your advantage. You see, an opportunity is opening up for you, most likely within the realm of career, to build a happier future for yourself, one that's got more meaning, one more purpose, that's not like, filled with that daily humdrum, dull routine that makes your life such a pain in the butt. And, maybe you've been having a hard time finding the motivation lately to take steps that you ultimately know that you should be taking. And now comes your chance to kind of get pushed a little bit harder. Towards the end of the month, you may find that a fire is being lit beneath you within the workplace. It's giving you an extra little push to move on. It's time to move on, right? And you're being asked to take on more responsibility at a time when you would really rather prioritize family and those who are near and dear to you for those of you who don't have a family. And there may be a breaking point in this situation where loose lips from another person make it so that you want to kind of set off in that other direction. So here are the things that may be kind of holding you back that you need to kind of look out for in terms of those games that your mind plays with you to try to make you think that you shouldn't do so. So one part of you might be thinking, am I aiming too high? I've aimed that high before, and it really just kind of left me falling flat on my face, and I had to pick up the pieces, and that wasn't quite so pleasant. So I don't really know if that's what I want to do. Do I have what it takes to seize this opportunity? It's also likely that you're going to need another person's backing for things to go ahead. And we know the age-old saying, too many cooks have a tendency to spoil the broth. And there can be some tensions that arise within that situation because, with this creative venture, whether it be a career or just some creative concept that you're working on that you're going to need somebody else's backing on, your decisions financially are not purely going to be your own. And that's something that's a concern for you. And so you're really not sure if you want that particular involvement, but on a certain level, you kind of feel like you do need it. Now, you can give in to all of that fear if you really want to, or you can go out that open door while it's still open, before it closes, and whilst you still have a chance. Hello there, Leo, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. You know, some people have called me a bit of a control freak, right? Like I had some people who, in exchange for barter in the past, had, offered their services to answer my emails for me, but I quickly began to feel like, you know what, this is something I really want to handle myself because I know the tone I like to communicate in, right? And then there was the time where I got really fed up with when my website was having problems not being a priority to technical support people. So I decided to learn how to do all of that myself. Now, I know this just sounds like I'm talking endlessly about myself, but I'm not. I'm actually talking about you, Leo, because you're very similar. You're very responsible and resourceful, and you know that you can't send a mouse to do the job of a lion. And sometimes when you send a mouse to do the job of a lion, you find out that the mouse turns out to be a rat. And you might be finding yourself in just such a situation where you're going, you know what, maybe it's time that I took a little more responsibility for where my life is going and put it on my shoulders rather than trusting in other people's resources quite as much. Now, if you've been following my horoscopes for the last couple of months, you know that it's been a lot about you letting yourself learn how to let other people help you and learning how to work in tandem with other people and learning how to recognize that when two people come together and they're able to achieve something great, each of them has their own agenda. But sometimes that agenda begins to get in the way more and more. And you may be finding yourself in April with that coming to the surface a lot more. Now, this person has been really helpful in your life, and you've actually learned a lot from them in terms of where you're taking your life in relation to a creative vision or a purposeful career. These are things that might be themes that are active for you, Leo. One, a direction where you're more in the limelight, and the other person has taken on a supportive role, and you've learned a lot from them. But even though it makes moving on from that connection much harder to do, all things must come to an end. And sometimes when you trust other people to have your back, they don't always have your best interests in mind. We don't want to go into the et tu Caesar scenario of, when you have your back turned, it kind of leaves your back vulnerable. And you may find yourself in the future continuing forward with this situation that you're paying for a lot of this other person's decisions. And you need in your domain, Leo, for your word to be law. Your word needs to be law. And it is. And it's time that you get firmer about that. It's time that you underline it, underscore it, put it in bold font print. This is my domain. And in order to do that, you have to be willing to let go completely. Welcome, Virgo, to your April 2025 horoscope. I want you to imagine for a moment that you have to take a really long car journey and you're in the back seat and there's somebody in the back seat with you, somebody that you've known for a while, but they kind of start dropping these subtle insults, and you can sense it's almost like they're trying to pick a fight with you. That's not pleasant. I mean, you can try to change the subject, you can try to talk about other things, but occasionally it just keeps slipping back into the conversation. And you reach a certain point where you just kind of go, you know what? I don't want to be around this person. Does this sound familiar? Is there somebody in your life now that you don't want to have around, that you've decided, hey, you know what? I'm pretty fed up with people pleasing, with trying to make this other person happy. I'd much rather make myself happy now. And that's important for this new phase of my life that I'm entering into, that I make myself happy. Some people grace our lives through their presence, and some do so by leaving it. And it's not your fault if a certain someone is wanting to leave your life. And it's not your fault if a certain someone needs to be pushed out of your life right now, too, because it's either that or you're going to be in a position where you're pushed over the edge. You need less of people talking about you behind your back and a lot more of people who are willing to support you face to face, who are there for you, who've got your back, who share things in common. I mean, sometimes people act like we need to be friends with absolutely everyone. I don't believe in that. Sometimes we need to draw to ourselves people with whom we have much more in common. It's not a selfish thing to do that. It's not a selfish thing to have a crowd of people who want to please you and who want to support you rather than you being in a position where you're having to do all the heavy lifting. Who needs a piss party? You definitely don't need that in your life right now, Virgo. And it's long overdue that you change this, that you open the door, that you kind of give the person a little more than a subtle nudge and to maybe let the door hit them in the backside, because at least that'll remind them that they need to not come back into the situation. Things are changing. This new phase of your life is much more about where you want to take things. You want people around you who share a commonality of purpose, who have similar ideas, and less people around you with whom you're going to have conflict. Hello there, Libra, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. Have you ever had like a conflict with someone and you kind of reflect back on it and you go, what on earth were we really fighting about? Towards the middle of April, we've got an alignment between Mars and Neptune that places you in just such a scenario. And when you combine that with the fact that Venus, your ruler, is going to be in retrograde motion for the majority of April, you're likely reviewing a recent relationship decision that you made and thinking that perhaps you might have behaved a little too rashly with the decisions that you made. Maybe you cut the person off. Maybe you just kind of went, enough is enough, and I need to close the door on this particular connection. But now you're kind of looking at the situation and you're going, hey, we all make mistakes. Venus is going to be backtracking into Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, and Purva Bhadrapada has this tendency to bring to the surface the recognition that on one level, we're all a little bit angels and we're all a little bit devils. And so as soon as you see the front side of a person, you can, very well bet that they're going to have a backside, and everybody has one, including you, Libra. But that's enough of me talking about your backside before I get myself in trouble. The point being that we all make mistakes. And sometimes we reflect back on things and we go, it would be much easier to just let bygones be bygones. After all, this person seems very important to you, and you don't really want to lose the connection, but you have to ask yourself, do you want to make yourself a doormat? Of course not. You don't want to be a doormat for this person either, regardless of how important they are to you. And you do recognize, at least I hope you do, don't forget that some boundaries were crossed. So maybe it's a good idea to find the happy medium and kind of take a look at the situation and go, all right, maybe it's okay to forgive, but important to not forget. Maybe it's okay to be bitten once, but once bitten, twice shy, I'm going to pay attention to this. And you don't need to approach the situation with apprehension or mistrust, but you do need to recognize that there is a real problem at root in this particular relationship, and you need to root out the problem and deal with it and place boundaries, put boundaries in place in order to deal with the issue so it doesn't happen again. When will enough be enough with this situation? That's one thing you're going to have to kind of ask yourself. Only you really know the answer to that. But you really need to take a look at this situation because there's no point in you ignoring the problem. Sure, let bygones be bygones on one level, but at the same time, deal with the source of the issue so you don't encounter the same thing moving forward. Hello there, Scorpio, and welcome to your horoscope for April 2025. The biggest changes in life, it's not really rocket science, but they're going to be revolutionary in nature. And so, with that being the case, quite often, well, there's a little bit of risk involved, right? Because if you're really going to overturn the status quo of a situation, it's going to require some upheaval. Things may not be as secure as you would like for them to be when you make that initial first step. It's kind of like when you look at your wallpaper and you're kind of going, I could deal with changing this wallpaper. And suddenly you peel a little bit of it back. Well, there's no turning back. You have to start the project. You have to really kind of go at it and just really change everything. That's what big changes, obviously, are really all about. But we're not here today to talk necessarily about a big change. Well, we are, and we're not. We're here to talk about a decision that, on one level, you likely thought was something small when you first entertained the notion. But now that you've actually committed to the path ahead, you're recognizing how absolutely momentous this particular decision was. You're very deeply aware that every action that you take at present is going to impact somebody else. And Scorpio gets a really bad reputation. And, I'm not telling you necessarily things that people say about Scorpios behind their backs, but Scorpios are keenly perceptive, so they probably know the things that people say behind their backs, such as Scorpios are often accused of being very self-centered. But Scorpios have a really strong sense of justice, and we know that your compassion really holds more depth than many people would understand. The people in your life mean a lot, and so of course it makes complete and absolute sense that you want to get the balance right. How can you do that? Well, the best way to do that at the present moment is to recognize that you've started this journey and now you have to own your choices and accept the things that your choices bring your way. Over time, through doing so, you're going to become more secure in the understanding that you weren't just doing this for yourself. You were doing it for the good of everybody else involved. So don't listen to what other people might be saying in terms of, oh, you're self-centered or, oh, you were only thinking about yourself. You weren't. You recognize somewhere in your heart that this journey that you're now setting off on alone is a journey that is really beneficial for the good of all. And for those of you who have children, this decision is likely a decision that involves the security and well-being of your children. So it's a monumental task. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it to help you to understand how absolutely powerful this particular moment is. So own your decisions. Own your decisions. What do I mean by that? Take responsibility for them. Take accountability for them. And the more you do so, the more the doubt will fade further and further to the back of your mind until it's just a faint whisper. Hello there, Sagittarius, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. So, all our lives, we put energy and effort into that pursuit of happiness, which we really know is our birthright. And so we think of those things that we have a feeling are going to make us happy, and we pursue those things. We set up our life around that. We build up our structures. You can call it a security paradigm, if you will. If I go about my life this way, it's ultimately going to make me happy. But what you're beginning to discover more and more is the path that you have like worked to set up your whole life isn't really bringing you the fulfillment ultimately that you would like for it to bring. And you're considering a wild and new direction. But as you do that, on one level, it doesn't really feel safe. And in addition to that, pursuing that path goes against who you thought that you were. But maybe who you thought you were is not who you fully are. And you're beginning to discover greater and greater levels of unfulfilled needs within yourself that you're needing to, well, kind of scratch that itch for, lack of a better way to put it, right? The thing is there's a lot of confusion in your world at the moment, Sagittarius. You're wanting to voice your needs more effectively to those important people in your life, thinking that if I was only able to do that, it'll make my life happier and it'll also smooth my life out a bit. But when you try to do so, you only encounter opposition, conflicts of belief with another person, because ultimately you're having a conflict of belief that's taking place within yourself. So sometimes, if we're in a position where we're wanting to relate more deeply to another person, we have to be in a position where we're first relating more deeply with ourselves. And when your world is kind of going topsy-turvy, upside down, how can you really voice what you need when you're not really fully sure of that for yourself? Over the coming months, you're going to sort through all of this. But right now, it's a confusing mess. And you don't want to scare an important certain somebody off. But at the same time, you could use a little bit of space. And you may find that in order for you to begin to get clear on what it is that you do want and what it is that you don't want, that you need to establish firmer boundaries with another person. Those important people in your life who hold an important position will always be there because they're connected to that deeper part of you that's unchanging, but to that part of you that's really going through, well, a metamorphosis, for lack of a better way to put it. There may be a few connections that fall by the wayside. Let them do so. That's okay. And equally, do not be concerned with needing to establish firmer boundaries so that you can have the alone time that you need in order to be able to sort through all of this. Hello there, Capricorn, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. They say the truth will set you free, but so will living in a cabin in the middle of the woods with a dog and being completely off grid. But you see, that's my own personal opinion and also my own personal taste. And so we have to kind of question what is truth in the first place, aside from a collective group of facts that we judge to be valid. And when it boils down to it, what is this thing that we do when we are speaking our truth? Because you see, speaking your truth is just that. It's you speaking your truth. We all have different ideas of what the truth is, and that truth is based upon beliefs, perception, values. And we generally tend to find that we run into groups of people who share a commonality of values, and then those are the people that we gravitate towards. We tend to form communities with, and then we begin to see a larger version of our quote unquote truth. Now, you may have recently been in a position where you were kind of connected with someone who was preaching their version of truth as the gospel. This is the only truth. And you may have found yourself in a position where you were actually buying into that philosophy. Actually, some people are very, very convincing. And so, in order to feel aligned or connected with this person, you kind of jumped on board with that for a while. But over time, you've been kind of thinking about maybe it's time to get off board with that. And an unexpected of events around about the time of the Saturn Uranus sextile. Saturn will be in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is very deeply revelatory, meaning going into deeper spaces within ourselves where deeper layers of truths are revealed, or having the truth of another person revealed to us, being able to see their true face. Uranus will be in Kritika Nakshatra, which is another nakshatra that deals with this concept of truth and purification. So about this time, the time of this aspect, this bottled up true perspective, which you may only just recently be becoming more aware of as you're kind of tapping into it yourself, is unleashed. You feel like you can't hold back and you just kind of let it rip. And that actually challenges this other person's gospel that they've been preaching for quite a long time. Now, this may seem to you like, oh, I don't want that to happen. I kind of like that person on one level, even though we have a difference of belief. But actually, this can be very beneficial to your connection with this person in the long run. It may catch them off guard. It may make them not want to hang out with you for a little bit, but eventually they'll have more confidence and trust in you as someone who's not afraid to show their hand. And you're going to need this person's friendship and mutual honesty going forward. For those of you who are parents and maybe kind of sorting things out with the other parent, with your over your child, that can be the case regardless of whether you're married or divorced or what the situation may be. It may be that this is something that comes to the surface in the negotiations that you're having with that person, or in the interaction over what's the best way forward for us as parents for the sake of our child, or what's the best way forward for us in terms of our mutual investments, things along those lines. These are fifth house matters, and that's one of the areas where this is likely going to play out. So don't be afraid to hold back. You're going to be likely going through a process of negotiation with this person on one level or another, whether it's just debate or trying to figure out a way forward. It's going to be necessary that this person begins to feel that they'll trust you to really express what you really feel. So do not be afraid to speak your truth, and do not be afraid to recognize that their truth is valid for them, but your perspective may be completely different. Hello there, Aquarius, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. So, just because somebody once helped you out, does that give them the right to influence your decisions, especially when those decisions run the risk of holding you back? People have the best intentions in the world. But there's that age-old saying, sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intent. And so quite often people will offer their assistance, not even aware that they're going to be or even thinking of attaching strings to that assistance. But then when they see you making choices with your life that don't mesh with how they think things should go, well, then they begin to go, I don't know if I want to invest my energy or assistance in this person unless they do this, right? And that's their prerogative, if that's the choice that they choose to make. But your life, your path, your own sense of purpose and meaning and inspiration should be driven and should be determined by the contents of your own heart, right? You don't need to be concerned about another person's opinion. You don't even need to try to explain yourself to them. Likely, thing is that they won't understand anyway. And it's not important that they even understand. It's time now for you to rule your own roost. And in doing so, which is a great choice and it's a path that you need to be taking, you have to accept that a few connections may fall by the wayside. But you also have to recognize that these may be connections that you don't need anymore. So don't be sad. Be willing to let go. Be willing to bid a fond adieu to these people. Be willing to recognize that they may come around in time. And if they don't, you don't need the extra luggage. Hello, Pisces, and welcome to your April 2025 horoscope. So, the question for you in April is, did you bite off more than you could chew? Well, yes and no. So you did bite off quite a lot, and it does seem like it's quite a burden for you to deal with. Let's, be completely upfront with that. But maybe you were hungry. Maybe you had a passion. Maybe you had a desire. Maybe you had big dreams. And maybe you should have taken maybe a little more planning time for those dreams. But hey, never delay your dreams when there's something that's basically screaming from the depths of your heart that they're ready to be realized. And in addition to that, you maybe just need to recognize that this is a period of adjustment. And it's natural when you take a big leap to kind of go, oh, maybe I misjudged the situation, right? Commitments have been made in your world, and those commitments are now seeming, well, a little bit hard for you to honor. Here's what you need to do, though. You need to avoid dwelling on this too deeply, because the deeper you dwell on it, the more you're going to kind of doubt yourself. And you're dealing with the period of time where you need to be developing greater and greater levels of self-trust. The universe has a really funny way of kind of stepping into the equation and laying to waste the best laid plans. So it's not so much that you misjudged completely. You just perhaps didn't go as deeply as you could have into your preparations. But it's okay for you to ask for help from another in moving forward. But as Neptune is shifting into your second house, which is the house of what comes out of the mouth, and so on one level, it's related to speech just as much as the third house is, you're going to need to be clear on what your needs are, right? And you need to be aware that you need to not be unrealistic in your expectations of another person. So be clear in your communication, be thorough. Doing so will help to preserve the integrity of a really important connection. You and this person are going to be undergoing a process of negotiation. And during that process, it's going to be necessary for you to be firm, but equally to be practical. You can really handle everything that is confronting you in April, Pisces. As I mentioned, you're just dealing with the period of adjustment.